be good on Facebook. All right, 1 second. Facebook's giving us a little delay as usual. All right. All right. You know what? I may have to. Book's just finicky. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Now it's going. I don't know why that happens. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. We are here with Ryan Trundle. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay, from running in Louisiana's 4th District. And Ryan has signed both candidates with a contract, the anti-corruption contract, and also CFAR. And bear with us just a moment, everybody. I'm going to take just a second to share this to the other Facebook page, the CFAR one. And if you want to take a minute and share the live video to your own campaign page.
All right.
Okay. There we go.
Let's see here.
Did you get it? Okay, let me just turn.
Oh, yes.
Do you see us now? Okay.
I do.
All right.
That's funny.
Sorry, my light was way down there. Okay. Sorry, we had a little delay with Facebook. So, okay. So,
Right.
Let's jump right in, and I'll let you just introduce yourself. Tell us how you got into politics, how you started this journey, and then maybe why you were signed these 2 contracts.
Sure. Well, I never wanted to be a politician. It's not my career goal. Actually, I think that's kind of important because you have so many career politicians now that
Yes.
They don't care what job that they have. They're just trying to get to the next job. You know,
Mm-hmm.
They're a representative. They want to be a senator. They're a senator. They want to be president.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, the people in their districts are getting left behind.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to do this job because the people need it. You know, I'm just a regular working guy with 2 kids and had a regular job before I quit to do this. We've got 78% of people in our district paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty right. And nobody was doing anything about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I decided to step up.
That's amazing. And what you said is so true across the country. And I think a lot of people are just kind of apathetic about voting, about getting involved because they feel that way. The people that are elected in their district aren't representing them at all. And they are, once they get to Washington, they spend all their time, raising money for the next election. So you are...
We're trying to do the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to raise as little money as possible.
I love that. I love it. I think, I like to brag that our organizations are pretty much broke because I think that's a good thing because I think, we've just got a Zoom account and we stream to Facebook and we've got, that's about it. And it doesn't take money to do this. It takes, some time. I love doing it. I was a Bernie supporter in 2016. And I guess, were you inspired by Bernie to run at all, or what was your...
Oh, definitely. That was a big part of it. As you may know, I was a delegate in 2016 for Bernie.
Mm-hmm.
And helped out in the campaign with the texting and as opposed to banks and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
That was really exciting. And it was definitely opened my eyes to see what's possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I was actually in Philly DNC week, and met a couple of delegates, though. What was your sense of Bernie later getting behind the establishment Dems? How do you feel about that, and what do you hear about that from people?
Yeah, well, it was tough at the time, um, but he did what he had to do, and I don't know.
It's a touchy question. There's a lot. Well, I mean, there's people feel pretty strongly about it one way or the other. I think there's
Yeah,
some sense that he will always stay true to his policies that he's been behind a long time. But I think people are also fed up with the establishment politics too. Now you're in Louisiana, which I imagine is pretty red. I should actually pull up this. I like to look at the Cook Political Index. Is it a heavily red where you are? Let's see.
well, you'd think so. They had us by, I don't know, 12%, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think, yeah,
But
that sounds right.
we have 62,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans.
Okay. Okay. Well, it
That's
is.
huge.
So do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is big. Okay. So, and you had, and let's see. Do you want to talk a little bit about? Let's see, about your district in general. Um.
Sure. Well, I said already, we've got 78% of people living paycheck to paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
30% poverty rate. There's a lot of rural areas, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
farmers
Mm-hmm.
that soybeans are just dying in the fields because they've got nowhere to sell them
Mm-hmm.
thanks to Trump's tariffs, and they're pretty upset about that. Our infrastructure is failing. We have 300 towns in Louisiana without clean drinking water.
Wow.
Streams are polluted, rivers are polluted. We have an entire cancer alley going down the south of our state.
Wow.
We've got some issues, but we've got some great people as well
Mm-hmm.
that are really want to see us succeed.
We've heard this a lot also. It's everyone knows about Flint, but a lot of other things don't get as much media attention. There's a candidate in New Hampshire, Mindy Mesmer, who had been, I believe, an environmental scientist, and she ran, but unfortunately did not win. But her primary, but anyway, that she's really making efforts, and it's a huge mess. It's been going on for so long, where corporations, are polluting, and there doesn't seem to be consequence because they're also funding the politicians that are making these decisions. So, yeah.
Well, that's the circumstance here too. We give billions, hundreds of billions of dollars away to these huge corporations that destroy our state and literally kill our people. But we don't give anything to regular working class folks.
Mm-hmm. So what do you hear from people most? Is it healthcare? Is it, I mean, when you've got 30% in poverty, I'm sure it's a little bit of everything, but what are people's main concerns?
Three biggest things are a living wage.
Mm-hmm.
If people are working 2 and 3 jobs just trying to survive, and if you're still not making it, you can't survive on that little
Mm-mm.
and have any kind of life. It's horrible, and it's leads to so many other problems, like our businesses. Businesses are closing up shop everywhere. The only new businesses you see are Dollar Generals.
Mm-hmm.
Is where people without very much money shop.
Mm-hmm.
And myself, and but you increase the wage to a living wage, you double your business. That's great for your business.
Right.
And our failing infrastructure, we have entire zip codes that don't pay taxes.
Mm.
They don't make enough money.
Right.
So
Then when
increase the wage, and you can actually fund your schools and fix your bridges and your potholes.
Right, when you hear, I believe for some reason Michelle Bachman just popped in my head of her saying that, oh, there are this many people that don't pay, a dollar in taxes. Well,
Yeah,
why like criticize those people? That's because they don't make enough to
they don't
even
have
do.
any money. Yeah,
Right, exactly.
the ones that worry me are the ones that like Amazon, which makes trillions of dollars, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That doesn't pay any taxes, or GE,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
these billionaires with teams of accountants that
Mhm.
they pay, so they don't have any pay taxes.
Mhm.
Those are the ones I worry about.
Right. Well, the pressure on Amazon did do some good. I don't know all the specifics, but I know that they did increase the wage, I believe, from public pressure. Um, I was
Yeah,
I was speaking with someone in a Whole Foods, which I don't really like to frequent. I usually try to go to a local food co-op, but I had to go in there, and I asked people that work there, just kind of chatting, like, are your wages better? How's your health care? I'm just curious about it because, for instance, Whole Foods during, I think this was when Obama was in office, there was kind of a big stink about Whole Foods. The CEO uh, something refusing to or being against some part of Obamacare. Again, I don't remember all of the details, but there was a boycott temporarily. People were kind of refusing to shop there. But it's so hard when you see, Amazon is bought Whole Foods now, and they're huge and taking over everything. It's like, how do you avoid it?
yeah,
And you can speak with your money and just not shop those places, but it is hard when that's what there is. I mean, Amazon has everything. I'm guilty of doing that sometimes. So
yeah. We're not enforcing any of these other than these antitrust laws. You can be a little mom and pop store, and a
mhm.
business will move in, a national conglomerate right
Mhm.
next door to you,
Mhm.
and undercut their prices, losing money for a year or two. They don't mind; they can afford it
Right.
enough to put you out of business. And
Mhm.
we have laws against that, but nobody's enforcing it.
Now, what's your sense when because you are in the deep south, and I'm sure you do run into a lot of people that supported Trump, and I talk about this ad nauseum, but I really do believe that a lot of people, I'm in North Carolina, a lot of people voted for Trump aren't necessarily the far right that the media paints them out to be, that it was a populist, anti-establishment kind of
Oh,
wave.
yeah.
But do you feel like can you reach those people when you talk? When you try to talk about what Trump is actually doing, and he's not really draining the swamp. And I mean, are you able to talk to those people, those maybe Trump voters?
Yeah, I do every day. Many times a day, I'll talk to people. You know, I drive a lot. Our district is huge. It's
Mm.
4 hour drive from one end to the other, almost five.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'll see people off on the side of the road, hanging out in their front yard, and I'll pull over and talk to them.
Mhm.
I talk to a lot of Trump people, and most of them are, if they're not completely fed up with them, they're fed up with Congress,
Mhm.
and they're fed up with these millionaire lawyers that
Mhm.
are career politicians, and all they want to do is, you know, move up in the political world, and
Mhm.
make laws that help other millionaires.
Mhm. Well,
They're not helping the
yeah.
rest of us.
Right, and that's why his drain the swamp really resonated with so many people. Whether or not he meant that in any bit at all, that's why that people heard that. I think. Right. So what kind of things? Oops, we had a little bit of a sound issue there. I think we're good. Um, Say something again.
Hello?
Okay, there we go. We got it. Yeah. So, have you experienced? Have you been able to get much media coverage? Whether that's anything national and local news. Have you in the papers or local TV news?
Not nationally, little local,
Mm-hmm.
but pretty much ignored.
Mm, okay.
We're not raising millions of dollars,
Right.
and we're not flashy, and
Mm-hmm.
I just run around knocking on doors all day, talking to people. It's not it's not all sexy and fancy.
Right, right. That it's funny. We hear that a lot too. Same story. Yep, you're ignored, and but that's the best way to do is go around and knock on doors. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
think the media would just rather ignore candidates like yourself and many of our other candidates who've signed the contracts. So, do you want to talk at all about your opponents here? Let's see. Let me go back. If you care to, if you don't want to be negative, that's fine. But I'll let you speak on. You can just talk about maybe who's funding
right,
them or stuff like that. Why you're a better candidate.
right, right. Well, we just see things completely differently. I want to raise the minimum wage. He thinks people make enough money. I think
Mm-hmm.
we need universal health care or single payer health care. We got more than 1 million people that are go bankrupt this year because of the healthcare bills.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them with insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Two very scary things happened this year. One, a teacher in Texas, young lady, perfectly healthy, had full insurance, and doesn't make very much money as a teacher, which we need to change also. But
Yes.
died from the flu because she couldn't afford the copay.
Oh, I hadn't
Yeah.
heard that story. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and just last month, another gentleman, young fella in his 20s, has a great job with insurance, but his copay is so high, it's like $10,000 for a copay. Diabetes, about $1,300 a month for your insulin.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't afford his insulin, and what a lot of people are doing is
Yeah.
stretching, pushing
Right.
it.
Right.
I'm not taking it right away when they need it, but trying to stretch it out because they can't afford it. I can't afford $1,300 a month.
Mm-mm.
But he died.
Oh.
Stretched it too far, and that's happening all over the country.
Yeah, I remember Bernie talking about that.
Right?
People not taking enough of their medicine. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, we have the same thing. We have pretty good insurance, but it costs a lot monthly, and then we still have so much out of pocket. It's just ridiculous. And then, as you said, when people are working those couple of jobs, the Dollar General and whatever, and I've worked retail when I was younger and had to work hack a couple of jobs together to put 60 hours of work, and I'm still walking around with no insurance. This was
Right.
back in the mid 90s, but some of my family.
Insurance was pretty good back then comparatively.
Oh, well, maybe, but it still wasn't offered when you worked, not when you worked, retail and restaurants. Not, I mean,
Well,
or it was so high then for, the wages, you couldn't afford it. So,
yeah. And you hear what they just did about the work week. Like, used to be 30 hours a week qualified you for health insurance at your job. They're moving it up to 40 hours a week. So your boss can knock you down to 39 and
right.
you have to do that.
I remember hearing about the guy, I can't remember his name, that owns Papa John's doing that.
Yeah.
And they caught hell for that, but they were doing where they were keeping employees just under so they didn't have to offer them health insurance. And then I think Mitt Romney threw him a party somewhere. So go figure. Yeah. So
and we need that. That's you go to Canada, they've got the best healthcare in the world. I think we're down to 22nd in the rankings. One of the highest infant mortality rates, which is scary. Worse than some third world countries, but we pay more than anybody else in the world by far.
Well, I'm
most of Europe. Even Mexico. I got stitches in Mexico. It cost me $1 a stitch, and I'm not even a citizen.
Wow. Wait, did you just happen to be down there, or did you do one of those trips to get a procedure done?
No, I just happened to be
down
there. Yeah.
I know people do that. I've heard that. They go have a root canal in Mexico City. It's cheaper. Actually, I'll tell a story. My daughter is in college in Scotland, and which might sound all fancy, but the fact is that she, as a U.S. citizen, is attending college in Glasgow for the same price it would cost to send her right down the road to UNC here, including the dorm and all. It's about the same price, and she had if you're an American student, though, you are forced to buy insurance for the length of time that you'll be there, like 4 years, say, if you're in a 3 or 4 year program. And I thought, oh, great, because if we're doubling up, we're paying for her here and then having to pay for that. It was $900 for all 4 years. In February, she had a sledding accident, and she basically knocked out her 2 front teeth after $6,000 out of pocket for braces. And do you know, her ended up to fix her teeth, like she's got veneers and stuff. It was like 75 pounds, which I guess is about $100.
Wow.
Yeah. So recently I took my younger daughter, she's just now in braces, and asked the orthodontist there, told them the story and said, what would this cost? Even with all this we pay out every month in insurance. And she said, oh, that would be thousands. So it just shows you how artificially jacked up these prices are. And we should just say enough's enough. And I'm also half Canadian, so I know, and I joke about it, that my grandmother liked to complain a lot, and believe me, she'd have complained if she had to wait too long to see the doctor or something, but I don't remember that, and I think if you need a specialist here, even when you've got insurance, you might be waiting a couple months. So that whole narrative that there are these long lines, I think, is just something that they push, and it's really not. Yeah.
I call my regular doctor for an appointment, and unless it's an emergency, it's 2-3 weeks away.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Same everywhere.
So is that something? Do you find? I mean, I think everyone on whatever side of the aisle you're on, politically, everyone's feeling the crunch from the increase in premiums and everything. But do you feel like there's resistance when you talk to a Republican or a whatever, we'll say a populist Trump supporter? Are they open to the Medicare for all, or is that a no-go with them?
Most of them are. Most of them are.
Okay.
They all work. They're all paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars every month and
mm-hmm.
still have thousands of dollars worth of deductibles.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? That's the thing too. Like politicians, most of them will pick Republican or Democrat just because they think they'll win. Most Republicans I talk to, they pick Republican because they think they're for the working class.
Mm-hmm.
I picked Democrat many years ago because I always thought they were for the working class.
Right.
You talk to people, there's no difference between working people, Republican, Democrat. They're not very much.
Right.
But it's the politicians out there that they're making this divide
yes.
and conquer.
Absolutely. The politicians and the media. I mean, the media fuels it so much, I think they're really, the powers that be are afraid of what you just said, that really there's not much difference. And it's really kind of the money party against the rest of us. So, yeah. So, what kind of things have you been doing to get out the word about your campaign other than knocking door to door? Are there colleges in your area?
There are colleges. There are a lot of churches.
Mm-hmm.
We are the Bible Belt.
Right.
So we got a lot of churches, and
mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know my opponent. He's claims to be, very Christian.
Mike Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He thinks there's atheists from California spying on the schools in Bossier. That was a recent article. That's pretty funny. But we have so many churches and ministers and preachers supporting us because he's not practicing what he preaches.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get religious, you can talk about the words in red in the Bible, and you're supposed to feed the hungry.
Right.
You're supposed to house the homeless and clothe
Mm-hmm.
the naked.
Mm-hmm.
I know Jesus didn't charge anybody when he healed the sick, so but
Right.
these guys in D.C. are taking away Social Security, kicked a million veterans off food stamps,
Mm-hmm.
plus a whole bunch of other people, throwing kids in cages. It's horrible, and it's completely, whatever faith you are,
Mm-hmm.
the number one theme is doing to others.
Right.
They're not doing that.
I think that just shows that how much those identity politics can set in, and people, it's a team sports mentality. I mean, I remember hearing about Karl Rove back in, I guess, I don't know, 2004 or before that, that they figure, oh, it's basically fooling the people that, yeah, we're for you. And so if you're an evangelical rural voter, you vote Republican. You don't ask any questions. You don't look any closer. So I think those things have just taken root for so long in our country that it's taking a while to undo it. And I think more and more people are paying attention and looking at candidates like yourself, and that really they hear you speak, and you don't sound like a canned politician.
I know that. Yeah, no, it's true. And I forgot what I was going to say.
Were you talking about the churches?
Have stolen the narrative, They stole a narrative about family values.
Mm-hmm.
But families can't afford to feed themselves,
Right, right.
In our military, 48% of active duty military families qualify for food assistance. I don't think starvation is a family value. I don't think bankruptcy is a family value. Taking money away from senior citizens definitely isn't a family value.
That's just totally unacceptable. The amount that our military spends on everything else, to have that be the case, that they're needing assistance. It reminds me of the Walmart. There were some pictures that circulated around a couple of years ago where Walmart had a big donation box at the front of their store, and it was for their employees. Like,
oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, what does that tell you?
Yeah. So they know.
Right.
Hey,
right.
we know we're giving them starvation wages, so why don't you help us out? Help us pay for our employees so we can make more profits.
Yeah, and it is despicable. So would you would support cutting military spending then?
I would, yeah. I mean, we waste so much of it. Buying ships, $100 billion ships that can't turn, or $1 trillion planes that can't even fly.
Yeah, I remember a story.
Meanwhile, and 800 bases around the world. What are we doing there? We don't know.
Right.
But meanwhile, the people, our own citizens that are risking their lives for our country, are struggling with families. We definitely need to rearrange that. Give our military families a living wage.
Absolutely. And now I think when people hear you say you want to cut spending, or you support cutting military spending, I know when I say it, I don't mean in any way to make the veterans suffer or military families. I mean, I believe we should absolutely take care of them. They, risk their lives in a lot of cases. But it's just the obscene amount that's spent. There were stories of particular helicopters. I don't remember which they were, but billions of dollars, and they're just sitting in some hangar somewhere. So you have to stop and think, okay, who is basically, getting welfare off the government? Which defense contractor is making all that money to build that and then have it sit there?
Yeah.
So
and it's also the way that we increased their wages, their cost of living increases, with military, with Social Security, with federal workers, who of course didn't get a raise this year because we had to fund $1.5 trillion tax cut for the rich.
Mm-hmm.
But like say military, their pay is based on an average of salaries, across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And if salaries grow up a certain percent, their wage grows a certain percent.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, wages have been stagnant since 1977, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they never grow more than inflation. So they got a 2.6% raise this year, which is nice, but so far this year we've had 6% inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And for things that you use every day, gas and a lot of groceries are more than 20-30%.
Mm-hmm.
You get a little bit of raise, but you're still losing money every year. We need to tie that Social Security, military wages, federal workers need to tie it to inflation.
Mm-hmm. I always think of this example of, I'm thinking it was maybe late 90s, that you could buy a cheap bag of coffee, like 8 o'clock or something. It was like $3. And just look now, look at the markup. Just that's just one item, but I mean that's across the board for everything. It's just crazy. So yeah, the recent, was it 750? I don't remember the exact number of the increase for military spending, but it would be interesting to see. I'm sure someone looked into this, where exactly how that money was divided, because as you said, doesn't seem to be going directly to military families. Where is that going? Weapons manufacturers?
And most of it, a lot of it you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, it's not going to the people that need it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Even though they keep saying it, you see them every day too. Oh, we love the military. You support our troops.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supporting your troops. You're supporting defense contractors.
Right. Exactly. Do you feel like when you talk to people, just your average person that's maybe not a real political junkie, are they getting some sense of, because the media certainly doesn't report on this stuff. Do you feel like more people are learning about this, how it really works, and being informed?
Yeah. Well, the general consensus is that Washington's broken, and they don't trust their politicians.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you know, and I know it's not really broken. It's working exactly like they planned it to.
Mm-hmm.
With disenfranchisement and all
right.
that. But it's not working for us.
Right.
And people know that the most. They also know, they see their paycheck every week,
Mm-hmm.
And you hear about this $1 trillion tax cut and
right.
not showing up in their wallets.
Right.
And they're going to have a big surprise come April.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you, so there wasn't really an establishment Democrat in your district, or was there? What, in the, let's see. I'm just always curious. Right. So there was a situation like that in North Carolina, and someone explained it to me. Well, okay. So like in a lot of areas, you'll have the establishment Dem and then the sort of, the grassroots person, who's usually who we talk to that sign the contracts. And usually the DCCC comes in and funds the other candidate, and they don't have a shot. And I was real curious in this one district why this wasn't happening, but it turns out it's because it was so red, and they just counted on the other person to win. I don't know. What is your sense of that? Do you?
Yeah, they've given up in a lot of areas. I think they could do a better job supporting states, and they say it's not flippable. Well, my district, we've got 60,000 more Democrats.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you have a really good shot because you're not up against an establishment candidate.
Yeah, there's districts like that all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put enough effort into it and, find the right people, you could flip every district you wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of course, what I would really like would be ranked choice voting.
Yes, we hear a lot about that. I've heard some arguments against it, but I think overall it just allows people to vote their conscience, and then have that sort of backup if that person doesn't win. I guess that makes people more comfortable with it. So yeah, do you hear there's much support for that where you are?
Um, well, people don't really know
Mm-hmm.
when they talk about it
Right.
and explain it. I think people are really excited about it.
Right. Right.
Uh,
So speaking of voting in your district, I wanted to actually share something. So I have been, let's see, there's a group, auditelectionsusa.org, and I'm trying to, do you know that, or you've heard of them?
I've heard of it.
Okay. So I'm just kind of trying to spread the word that one of the things that candidates can do, or actually anyone can do, is something called a public records request. So here, I'm just going to show something real quickly here. Let me share screen. So I mean, if you have you kind of done any of your own examining the numbers? Like, do you feel like um, you have a good shot? I mean, what's your sense of where what your chances, I guess, against your opponent? Because in a lot of races, the ballot images aren't being saved, and there's no way to sort of prove what's happening. So,
Right.
have you done any of your own following those numbers?
No, I mean, I know what numbers we have as far as who's registered what.
Mm-hmm.
I know who. Oh, there they are.
Yep.
You
Okay.
just did that, right?
I did
Okay.
that. I did that. Sorry. Okay, so let's see.
My screen changed. Did I break it?
Okay. All right. And yeah, I know. All right. So let's go to Louisiana. It's being a little slow here.
Do you hear what they did in North Dakota?
I don't know.
Purging voters who didn't have a physical address.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but on a lot of Native American reservations,
Mm-hmm.
you have a post office box.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, you don't have a physical address.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
You might not even know what it is.
we have a long way to go. I'm just sort of learning a lot of this, and there's a lot of stuff that happens. There's obviously the gerrymandering. There's the voter, purging people off the rolls, and what you just described, running out of ballots, all this other stuff. What this right here, verified voting, focuses on is what kind of voting equipment you have in your district. So if you don't mind helping me out here, let's see just a county, where exactly are? Oh,
Top
let's
left.
see. Here, actually, let's just do
District
this.
4.
Which county?
Caddo.
Okay, there we go.
I live in Caddo. So.
Okay. A lot of times they will be the same in one district. So
Yeah, I
let's
think
see.
they're all the same.
Okay.
They're electronic, no paper trail.
Right. Okay. DRE. So I don't believe that is something where they would be able to save ballot images. And I'm pretty sure this is not one of the states that is doing so. So currently, right now, they are just requesting for, let me move this back, for states to follow the law, which is to save the ballot images. A lot of this is it's not anything nefarious. People are just, the election officials, they have just not been told that they need to do this. But one of the things we're trying to do and are going to be adding on to the contract for 2020 is an election integrity pledge. And what that would mean is that if you did have something happen in your race, let's say, Tim Canova's best example right now. Are you familiar with
Yes.
what happened there? Okay, so when he thought things didn't look right, he at first, wasn't sure what to do. And then John Brakey from Audit Elections USA contacted him and said, look, we need to look into this. So what a pledge like this would do is if a candidate felt like there's something not right, they have election integrity, transparency, activists on the ready, and they've got lawyers ready to basically, fight if there's need to do so. But the first step is really to get put in the public records request to see the ballot images. And so this is just something anybody can do, and the goal is to eventually make it routine where doing so the candidate isn't then smeared with, oh, you're just being a sore loser and that kind of stuff, where it just becomes routine that they request that. So anyway, I'd just like to share that. And yeah, so right now they're working on stuff in Virginia and Florida. Florida's a mess. It's kind of seems to always be a mess. And Michigan also. But out of, I think it's 44 states that are able to save ballot images, something like only 5 are doing so. So yeah, it's a big problem. So if you're interested in that, I'll send you something. Oops, sorry. Wait.
No, that'd be great.
Where you can do that, and you can just ask to see the ballot images. They're supposed to save them, and then if they haven't, we'll go from there. But it's kind of amazing that that's a law and hasn't been done all this time. So I mean, how can you verify an election if nothing's saved? It's just a black box.
Yeah, so, but you do that even just with your checking account.
Yeah, that's true.
You check one balance here, and you check what you got written down, and right.
Right.
At least twice.
Yeah.
Checking account.
Right.
This is a huge election.
Right, and it's something that really, I mean, it's a nonpartisan issue. It's not one side or the other. I mean, I think Republicans and Democrats think there are problems with voting for different reasons, maybe, but it all comes down to needing to verify that they're real, that there's, we restore the trust in elections, because I think, when you ask people, a lot of people just don't and trust it, and that's a huge reason why people don't vote. And as I'm sure you know, the largest group of people is non-voters.
Right. They elect everybody.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think all of you guys, the fantastic CWAC and CFAR candidates are the ones that really speak to those people that may not typically vote. Because you guys, are speaking directly to them and showing through these contracts and through everything you talk about that you're there to represent them and not big money. So, I think we froze here. You froze, or the whole thing froze. I'm not sure. Okay, well, hold on just a second. Technology issues. Oh, there you are. Okay. Did it freeze? For you?
You stuttered for a little bit, but you're back now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's great that we have this technology. It's not, I always joke, it's not Wolf Blitzer's old, wall of whatever, graphics and everything. We're not high tech here. But it typically works. So yeah, have you found that using social media, has that been good to reach people? Or or...
Oh, yeah, I think that's the best way. As spread out as we are, if we're at one of those little tiny districts in a large city where you could walk 3 blocks and see everybody, in your district,
right.
That'd be one thing.
Right.
But having, 250 miles from one end to the other, trying to talk to everybody, just not going to do it. I want to. Eventually, I will. But, for now, this will have to do.
Well, 30...
That's another problem. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh no, no, it's okay. I don't mean to interrupt. I think sometimes it's pausing and I don't hear you're talking. Sorry. Keep go ahead, please.
Like,
Oh.
I was going to say that's another problem we have in our area, and sure, a lot of rural places are like this, and no internet.
Mhm.
There's no high speed internet. Yeah, you might be able to get satellite or something like that,
Mhm.
but you can't even get a cell phone reception in a lot of places there.
Mhm.
And you think about it, next 10 years, we're going to lose half our jobs, more than half our jobs, some people say, to robots and computers.
Mhm. Mhm.
The new market, the new education system, a lot of it's going to be online. You're going to be
Mhm.
working online. You'll go to classes online, and
Mhm.
people out here in the rural areas are being left behind. Uh,
Mhm.
we need to
Yeah.
make that broadband internet a utility and get it to
Absolutely.
everybody.
Absolutely. But again, that's one of those things I think that, when the coasts and the media that are on the coasts,
Yeah,
they forget about the rest of the country. And that is just so alien to them, like that anybody might be without internet. But I
yeah,
mean, it's a huge country and it's those what they call the flyover states. But I know that that's a problem. Parts of rural North Carolina, I'm sure, are the same way. But yeah, I agree completely. We need to make that a public utility. So yeah, that's something that needs more awareness for sure. So, are there any particular items on CWAC or CFAR other than Medicare for all? Anything that I don't know, the term limits, or I love the you can't be a lobbyist right after you've been in office.
yeah,
I think that's a great one.
yeah. I don't like lobbyists. Term limits are great.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling somebody the other day, I thought it'd be a great idea to make the House of Representatives like jury duty. Yeah, just
Ah,
pick
uh huh, right.
a regular person. We don't need politicians. Plus you're supposed to be representative of your area.
Right, right.
It's
And
a very very tiny percentage of us that are millionaire lawyers.
mm,
They're not representative of us. They don't look like us.
mm-mm.
They have no idea what we're going on. Do like jury duty. Do it as a civil service, and you pay them well. You get a vacation in DC for a year, and
Right. Yeah.
they might do a better job.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
Instead of
remember.
doing worse.
Yeah. Well, they know their district. It's
Yeah,
amazing how many there's still races where the people we hear, oh, this person, this establishment candidate hasn't even been here for 20 years. I think one of them was Johnny Axum's district in Minnesota. It's like
yeah,
he hadn't been there, hadn't lived there in 20 years, but big money was funding it.
yeah.
So I
And
don't.
that's the biggest thing. That's the root of all evil, right? And the root
Yeah.
of all evil in politics, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you just can't possibly when you're taking money. One of my favorite sites is the Open Secrets site. Actually, yeah, we should let me look that up really quickly, and we'll see. Or unless do you happen to know who some of the big funders are for Mike Johnson's?
The only one I remember is American Ethane. It's
Mm,
a Russian-owned company that they operate out of Texas.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Huh. Yeah. I just think this is how you know. Yeah, I see that oil and gas. Interesting. Okay. He has raised 1 million. That's less than some we see. Uh, Oil and gas, 62,000. Leadership packs, 60,000. Health professionals. I should dig a little deeper on this, and I wonder what that means specifically. Is that health insurance companies? Because something tells me that wouldn't be for the people.
pharmaceutical companies
Right, right.
included.
Mm-hmm. And you wonder what these health insurance companies, how much they spend on having, some department that sits there and figures out, like, okay, if we just deny the claim this many times, the person will give up and just go ahead and pay it.
Yeah.
I actually had my doctor's office recently. The women that work the records and stuff and filings things, they told me that. They're like, yeah, that absolutely. You just have to keep fighting. I'm actually owed some benefits back, and they just will do that. I fought Blue Cross Blue Shield for 6 months over having to pay $500 for a generic migraine medication because I filled it at a CVS while I was traveling. I filled it out of state, and it was out of network or something. So I fought them for 6 months.
Yeah. For something that you deserve, that you paid for.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Right. And who knows, it's probably... Yeah, it's just crazy. And plus it was a generic. It probably cost $2 in Scotland. I don't know. Yep, so that's definitely something that affects everyone. And I think, if you're, higher up the income ladder, maybe you can absorb those costs and maybe you don't take a vacation or something. But for people, that are more paycheck to paycheck, that means they don't eat or something, or they just ignore, like you said, and not take their medicine. It's disgraceful. It really is. It is. Well, I want to give you the floor and let you, if there's anything that we haven't covered and that you want to talk about.
Well, let's see here. I think we pretty much touched on everything. Social Security, universal health care, living wage. One thing we do have a huge problem with in Louisiana is incarceration rate. Number one in the world. Up until a few months ago, and now Mississippi is. We're only number 2 in the world.
Wow.
We're working there. But it's still horrible. You have these private prisons. You have police departments that fund themselves by arresting people, and courts that fund themselves by finding people. And nobody's actually helping people. There's so many guys that are in there, and women, that non-violent offenders that made a mistake and not hurt anybody, that don't deserve to be there. And once you go to jail, for almost any amount of time, you lose your job, you lose pretty much everything. And when you get out, you're starting from scratch, and which leads to more crime and worse crime.
Right.
Yeah.
That's definitely not rehabilitation.
There's a fella here in, let's see, Pinedale. Older gentleman was arrested for cultivating marijuana. And, like, oh no, he had a couple plants. He probably had arthritis. Medicine. It's never killed anybody ever. People use it for PTSD and to cure cancer and for epilepsy. It's time to end the federal prohibition on marijuana.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Stop throwing everybody in jail.
It causes fewer problems than alcohol, as a general rule, and helps people with those conditions, like you said. It is ridiculous. How did this guy, how long was he put away for this?
Just happened a few weeks ago. I don't know if he's been sentenced yet. But our laws are ridiculous. I've got a friend who was in Angola for 20 years. It's a big prison down here, a huge prison. And he was released 20 years later because he didn't actually do the crime. We have non-unanimous juries down here, which we're trying to change November 6th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's on the ballot to get unanimous juries. He was convicted. 10 people thought he did it, and a couple people were like, yeah, I don't know if he did, which to me is, reasonable doubt. But they sent him away for 20 years. Turns out the 2 people were right, and he didn't do it. But, anyway, he's in jail with a couple of fellas, and they came in at the same time. One police officer walked up to him and said, "Hey, you got any crack?" The guy said, "No, I'm not a dealer." He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you $20. You go get yourself $10 worth, and give me $10 worth." Guy says, "Okay." Bam! He's a dealer. Arrested and still in jail, like 25, 30 years later. Another fellow that went into jail at the same time shot a police officer, got out in 15.
Wow. And I imagine this is a very divided issue, or it affects more African American people in your state.
Oh, yeah, 90%.
Sure.
Yeah. But if you just look at marijuana, everybody uses it at the same rate. It's like 10 to 20%. Right. But if you're black, you get arrested 90 times more. You have
right.
90% greater chance of getting arrested.
And you're in the deep South. It's a little different than I'm still in the South, but not the deep South. Well, we have a couple of liberal pockets that really there are a lot of people from all over the place. That kind of gives it more of a, I don't know, a purple, but more of a, I don't know, progressive bent, I guess. But yeah. Wow. And you think about that, like how much we spend like per prisoner too. Like it's just. And like you said, they get out and then they have a record, and how do they put their lives back together? And especially when it's on something so stupid as marijuana. And yet we have, but we're not jailing our bankers and people that destroyed the whole economy. I think we should follow Iceland in that regard and put some people that caused all the crash and stuff in jail.
If corporations are people, we should be able to throw them in jail.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good.
Like some corporations spewing out carcinogens and everybody in the neighborhood dying. Maybe we start putting them in jail for murder. We'll see how ethical they are in the future. I
think that's a good bumper sticker idea. Yeah. If corporations are people, throw them in jail. Hey, I like that. Campaign slogan.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to talk. And I'm so glad that you found the contracts, and I'm sure your opponents have not signed those, and wouldn't, I'm sure.
No.
So are you able, when you talk to people, do you tell them about that? Does that have any, impress anyone that you're willing to sign something like that?
I do, and definitely, people really respect that because everybody knows what the backhanded deals and how shady Washington is, the corruption and this and that, and I tell them about that. It makes a difference.
Right. Right. I mean, they haven't been tested in a court of law yet, but I mean, it is your signature on the line, and I think if people, elect you for your promises to do those things and you don't do them, then they hold you accountable, and that's how it should be.
As they should. Throw me in jail, too.
Yeah.
Why are politicians going to jail?
Yeah, well, right. Many should be. I agree. Yeah.
You kick, 10 million people off of health insurance. You get thousands and thousands dying because of that.
Yeah, when you took some money from, wherever, Blue Cross Blue Shield or something. Right? I agree. It should be criminal. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think people are fed up, and I certainly want to see higher voter turnout. It's something that just really, John Brakey from the Audit Elections USA is always talking about this, the biggest group being non-voters, and that's the whole key, I think, in getting all of you guys elected. I think it's possible. It's just how to reach those people. And I do think that maybe one of the ways is to show this, that you're willing to, that you sign these contracts, and also this recent addition, the election integrity stuff. I think for people that don't trust the elections, if they hear that you're someone that cares about that, I think that has an impact. Marcia Squire in Michigan, she said that she's gotten a lot of typically non-voters attention for talking about election integrity. So
Yeah.
it's a big issue for sure.
It may be the most important one. It might be not the one that affects people immediately, most, but certainly as a whole.
Absolutely.
Definitely our biggest issue in politics.
Absolutely. I was at it was a conference. I'm drawing a blank right now, but a conference at an American university. It was run by the Draft Bernie people, and they had a lot of different panels, and it was all great topics. But I sat in on the election integrity one, and Bob Fitrakis was there, and a couple other activists, and they said, all these things everyone's trying to do is great, but if we can't get the people elected that people are voting for, if there's election fraud, then none of this stuff can happen. So it really is the core of democracy. So we'll keep fighting. So it was really nice to meet you, and I wish you the best of luck, and it looks like you have a pretty good shot where you are.
Thank you. I think we do.
Yeah.
We do. We've got a lot of great people around here helping us out too.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think so many people are willing to just put in sweat equity now. They're tired of seeing the way things are, and that's great. Regular people get involved. So, okay. Well, it was so nice
to... If anybody else wants to get involved, Trundle.com.
Okay, we'll put a link under on the candidates with the contract and CFAR pages too. For people to donate.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. It was really great to meet you.
You too.
Okay, good luck. Good night.
Good night.